a real pleasure and privilege to speak at anything, but especially a conference that feels so aligned to my personal values, my experience of what really helps, and what I know to be true of all the athletes that I work with and have worked with on my journey. So I really hope, as an evening session, that you guys stay engaged, stay entertained. I'm not promising a show, but I hope to at least keep you awake for an evening session. I want to thank you for giving your time to come and have a listen. So why did I describe it as this? I did for a deliberate reason. I feel like the world, in general, at the moment especially, but at all times feels very chaotic. And the system of elite sport is incredibly chaotic within that. There's a lot that goes on and it's very busy. And so the aim of this presentation is to talk about how we can keep a bit calm in the storm that goes on individually, internally, and also around us. I feel like humans are complex. I mean, that's not rocket science, is it? I'm sure a lot of you would agree with this. I feel like I'm complex. I feel like the people around me and the relationships. And so we're adding that to the chaotic nature of everything. But our care should be unconditional. And especially the role of parents and those adults privileged to have your children in our care, it's a real unconditional support that we should have. That doesn't mean there isn't conditions to their performance. There are going to be markers as to whether they stay selected, whether they make the team, whether they make the starting 11, but the care that they get around dealing with that should be unconditional. So I think that's something I'm going to try and talk about, because the biggest markers that athletes look to are their parents, their caregivers, their guardians, and the people on the sideline for how well that they're doing. And if we're able to regulate ourselves, we can regulate them. But often we get invested in the outcome, in the drama, in the short-term, finite results of that game. But it's an infinite game, it's a long-term one. And that's what I like about a number of these conversations that we're going to have in the next day and a half, because we can keep working out how well do I hold that position, or how well do I get sucked in to the narrative of 90 minutes or the race ahead. So I'm often going to talk about systems, and when I do that, I'm going to take a behavioural science approach to how I see performance. And I believe that performance is through people. And that's every one of you in this room, as well as it is the young people that we work with. And there's two things we look at from a behavioural lens. We look at the mindset, their motivation, their personality, their character, their history, everything that's internal to the individual. And then we look at everything around them. We look at the culture, the environment, the leaders, the biopsychosocial lens on everything that's going on. First question of the day, well, it's a pre-question, because my next one says first question. There's a percentage difference that behavioural psychology will give to these two. And I'll be curious about whether you think it's more important to work percentage-wise on the system within or the system outside. Anyone want to hazard a guess? Big room means you don't really have to, do you? In. I always thought it was in. Genuinely, I always thought it was in. From a behavioural point of view, we think it's a 60-40 split to outside. So you can take any individual and put them in a new system, and they might behave in a new way because of the conditions that are around them. So we will get youngsters that come from all different backgrounds, and then we will give them team rules and team charters and ask them to wear a uniform and behave in a certain way. And very quickly your behaviour changes. I know when I go to visit a friend and I get to their house, if all the shoes are lined up in the hallway, I take my shoes off. But if there's no shoes, I tend to just walk in with my shoes on. So right from the start of entering someone's new building, you will act in a way that you think will enable you to fit in. And so the manager, the coach, the staff, the parents, you're all so powerful at what it is that we do around here. And that's what's been built here, and it's really exciting that you guys get to be on that journey and part of the standards. So, first question. I'm going to do numerous questions throughout this, and they're mainly for introspection, for you to have a bit of a think, but why have you given up your Wednesday night to be here? And I had to ask myself that question, because I say yes to things, and then I'm about 3 weeks out and I'm preparing the presentation. Why did I say yes to this? I've got to re-engage my purpose at all times about why I'm doing anything. Because if I just float through, if I just turn up, I'm probably not I might get something, but I might not get all I want to. So I guess for a moment, I'd like you to think about why you are here. Because you're probably more likely to get more out of tonight and tomorrow if you're really clear what it is you want to get out at the end of it. And some of my things that I thought were important, I love to learn. So I thought I get to meet lots of exciting new people, and I get to learn. I get to stretch myself. Standing up and presenting is easy at times, but when technology and lots of other things are thrown your way, earlier on when we practiced, it was boiling in here. I was like, there's going to need to be a costume change and all sorts. We've got the aircon on that, so it's okay. Connect with new people, reconnect with old friends. To have thoughts and feelings provoked. I'll ask a number of questions and hopefully you're sitting there thinking, do I do that? Do I not do that? Why do I do that? And to wake up. Ultimately, we ask our players and our athletes to journey through sport well. That's the only way we believe sustainable success is possible. You can journey through sport and have success, but not sustainably, unless you are being true to your values and you are able to restore and revive and stay alive. And so that's what we're asking. And maybe today and tomorrow can be that for you. First apology of the night as well. I tend to speak fast and loud. That's the Irish in me, so sorry. And please know that I can repeat things or I can send you the slides after. So if you miss something, don't worry. Also, one of the videos, there is a slight delay. So that too goes a bit quicker than the mouth, which doesn't make things easy. So the aim for the next 80 minutes, I'd really like us to learn about ourselves, because if we do that really well, we can learn about the people we look after. I'd like us to look at the role we play in the systems that we operate in, and around us how to get the best work done to support our young people. I'd like us to learn and reflect through a journey. We're going to use the analogy and we're going to get you all drawing. That's why there's paper and pens on all your seats, but some of you also have notebooks, which is great. And hopefully I'm going to provide some thoughts and questions for you to come back to me for. So my background, there was a brief introduction, but I've been working 18 years in elite sport. I've worked in a number of Olympic and Paralympic sports, from weightlifting to archery, to swimming, to hockey, to sailing, gymnastics. I've worked in professional Premiership football, at Arsenal Football Club, and at Southampton, and at Brighton, and a bit at Newcastle, and the Lionesses for the FA, went to the Olympics with them, and a little bit of cricket, actually mainly cricket, which is a really odd sport, and I'm not sure if you guys know so much about that one, but I've done a few years with England and done tours and stuff with their England senior team. And now currently I go between teams and individual clients. So that's the makeup of my work. And then occasionally I get to do something really different and exciting and collaborate with people that I've not worked with. A disclaimer, I'm not presenting anyone else's work in terms of any of those organisations. I'm here presenting my views. It's not the perspective of any of those individual organisations. And I'm also presenting ideas or projects or work that was done collaboratively. So I'm definitely standing here representing all the other people I've worked with. It's my favourite way to work is with others, and anything I'm presenting has been something that's been seen before. So it's evolved, adapted, or adopted by us in somehow. So let's go, question 2. Are you here for performance or well-being? That's the question I get asked at most job interviews that I go for. Are you a performance psych or are you a well-being psych? I normally don't take the job there. My question, to be additionally provocative, is I'd love to know what you think your return on investment is. So whenever you as a parent pay for a private education, or you invest in all the hours where you bring your son or daughter around their sporting endeavours, or you maybe sacrifice another sibling who has to come in the car as well, or you sacrifice time at your job, or your free time, or your spare time, or your money, investing in the people that you care about, or you're someone who works in this area. Because I hear the other side of it. I hear the player who goes at 28 years of age I'm doing this for my parents. I need to give back. I know he drove me 200 miles 3 times a week to and from training. He used to feed me balls into a machine or take me out to the fields. And so very quickly, a player's purpose can be to pay you back. And that's quite a burden. And you've never intended that to be the case. I am sure, fundamentally, everyone in this room just wants the person in their care to be okay, to be happy, and to have the best chance of living their dreams and doing what it is they need to do. But I get asked that a lot from players. I get, oh, it's just to make my parents happy, or they deserve it. And little do they know the strife that that athlete is going through in order to prove that they can do it. So if a player works out their why, they get a greater chance of probably doing it more successfully because they're doing it for themselves. It's not a self-centered or selfish reason, it's just less of a burden and expectation. So I guess it was pretty obvious that I do things for well-being and performance. I believe they're inextricably linked. You're dealing with the whole person, and that's why the word holistic comes up a lot on this conference, but also in everything I say, because there's an individual in front of you. At any given age, whether they're the 8-year-old I worked with at the under-9s, or they're the 18-year-old going through lots of change, or they're the 28-year-old, or they're the retiree at 38. There's someone who has got their whole life going on, and I try and work out what it is they need the help with at that time. And we do a lot on well-being, mental health, and safeguarding, all being proactive things that help human performance. And so that's definitely a model that we keep in mind when we're working at all times. So what's the climate here? Do I think a system or a team or a player can survive or just thrive? What's going on with that individual? Time for a video.
We want to prepare for life, you know, we want to be most challenging for the kids to push them on to the next level, but as well in that challenge we have to be caring. How can we support every single individual to live up to the expectations really, and support them in every aspect of their personal individual development. Our vision, Strong Young Gunners, is perfect in that sense of that we have a lot of individuals here. We want to build them up strong, that they can stand up strong in every challenge they face. That can be mental health, and regarding to being released from this club, being injured and struggling at home. So we try to put everything in place here to make sure that there's an open forum for mental health. The amount of pressure these youngsters are facing at a very young age is immense. So it's our job, you know, to always raise that, you know, to ourselves, to bring perspective really to life and to our young kids who are part of our academy. It is tough because of the nature of the football world, but we want to make sure that we put perspective in it, have reality checks along the way, and make sure that we have humble individuals, as I said, strong young gunners who are able to steer, you know, their journey and their path, but they always know that there's someone to support, someone to help.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges we have in helping young men is to talk about their mental health and to talk about how they feel. That's something that gets often avoided and can be underpinning how they behave and how they think and act. A regular conversation with the player often surrounds, how are you? And they go, I'm fine, I'm calm, and they walk off. Academy Island is a metaphor. It's something that was constructed with the players and staff to a common language that everyone can talk about in regards to emotional literacy. It gives something that other people can have a conversation about. And we decided to draw up literally an island and then say if you were to populate it with a number of different geographical places, but that could refer to situations or emotions or feelings, where would they be on the island and what would the island have as part of it? From having an idea on a whiteboard with coloured pens, we got designers in to help us put it in a far more visual form. It's magnetic, and everyone got a magnet, and then they're able to put themselves somewhere and move themselves around the map. At the top, the Bay of Plenty, that's where when you get a new contract, it's when your friends and family are all there, there's a real influx of money, and you've got the life, really. Everyone is singing and talking about you. People tend to go on a comfort cruise often when they get there. Unfortunately, that doesn't go all the way to the island of opportunity, which is what they assume, because the reality is on this map, the helicopter pad, that's the manager, and that's what gets you across to the first team.
You know, it's quite a tough experience going through something. You see your mates doing really well and January's come up and, you know, you've got players going on loan and pushing up with the first team, and so you can find yourself, you know, one day you're on Mount Challenge, then suddenly you're back in head loss, and then you're back at Mount Challenge, and so it's nice to be able to sort of look at the map and realise where you are and sort of move locations. Sometimes if you're in head loss, you can put yourself back on Mount Challenge and go from there. So I'm just on the edge of returning. I still say I'm there at Mount Challenge, and hopefully get back to playing soon.
It's really important players work out where are they at the moment. So if there's been a lot of change, we've got winds of change over here, we've got a lot of sort of geographical things, that can create sort of confusion and it can create head loss. So again, it's really important players go, do you know what, that is honestly where I am, but I know where I need to get to or how I'm going to get there. And then this map has got highs and lows, but it's got a very low point on it as well. We have off the map. That's our reference point for mental health there, and that's the point where we want someone to reach out for help. We want teammates to notice in with each other, and we want them to tell us. I would say at times the island is fun, so therefore that takes away some of the stigma or the seriousness of it, because we use it to have fun. What it does do is start more conversations regularly with groups of them that they might then take down to the changing room or to another setting.
Even adults, even at that time when I struggled before games and I was not really comfortable with the situation, I was always trying to think that it shows a weakness in yourself, you know, speaking about yourself, seeking help. We're trying to get rid of that notion and trying to make sure that bringing out more stories about myself, about others, bringing people into more attention that top athletes struggle. It's normal, you know, we're trying to bring it to life in a normal possible way and encourage youngsters, you know, to speak up and speak out no matter what, because we are a club that cares, and if we want to be most caring, we need to support in every given moment.
It's always got to finish on a goal, right? Never looks great if he misses the goal after that point. He's no longer in the UK, he's now playing in Europe, so language skills become part of the important thing. There was a boy on that footage earlier on who was talking to another player. So the older player who was on the under-23s, his name's Danny Ballard. And at 14, Danny got released by Arsenal, and the player care team got involved to support him through that. And he went away for a couple of weeks, and he then came back and he spoke to the academy manager and he said, I don't agree with your decision. The academy manager's like, well, I've had a few of these conversations when someone's either really upset or wants to fight me. And he goes, okay, why? And Dan went, well, I think this happened, the next happened, and da-da-da. And I'm stronger than the other boys, but you think I'm a big lump, but I can do more than that. And he came up with a few reasons he thought. And the academy manager was quite shocked that this guy, who normally goes really red as soon as he's asked a question, can often struggle speaking, gets caught in his chest, but is now 6'3", very tough defender. So looks big, but is actually quite soft on the inside. Had come to his office and had said it, and he hadn't recruited in that position. And he thought, well, what harm can it do? He said, okay, Dan, I'm gonna give you 6 months back in the academy. Why not? Dan was like, nice one. I'll go away, I'll work in the summer, I'll come back. So he went away in the summer and he worked as a personal trainer and he did extra football, and he came back in the season and he started well and he was fine, and he got through the next year. So he got all the way to under-18s. And then he got to under-18s and Danny Ballard got released again from Arsenal. And this time he was released, and our 2 centre-backs went down in our pre-season trip. And he got a phone call. Dan, we want to give you one more chance in the academy. Dan's like, I'll listen, you know. There's only so many times you can keep me out and then come back to me. But it's Arsenal, so I was going to be at Stevenage up the road, which is 3 leagues below. So I'll come back. I have his permission to tell the story. So he came back, and he only left Arsenal permanently 2 years ago. So he was still playing there at 25 years of age and did loan spells throughout different leagues in the English Football League, and is currently at, he's going to test me, somewhere up North Sunderland. He's been in 2 playoffs at Wembley. He's helped Blackpool, he's been at all sorts. He's worked really hard at his public speaking, he's worked really hard at his defending. He plays for Northern Ireland in the senior men's team. But he's a wonderful story of someone who found a way, found a resilience to keep coming back, found a way to change people's opinions, found a way not to let his pride get in the way, to go and play and work on his own and come back. And he's someone now who advocates for mental health, for well-being, for psychology. He's in one of my book clubs that we do online with a few Premiership footballers, and he's on there and we read a book, any book, fiction, serious book, like all of the book clubs you guys might be part of. And he'll suddenly talk about feminine power, because we've read Untamed. So, you know, there's lots that can go on behind the facade of some of these people, and that's what we're trying to encourage. What's the journey behind them? What's the journey they're going through? What's the journey you can help them with? How can we accept them, who they are, and help them with how they're going? He's actually soon to have a kid, it's very exciting. So that chaos that we talk about in football, in athletics, in elite sport, in the world in general, we came up with the map, and the reason I use that video is because you could come up with whatever you needed. But when Danny Ballard came with me to a conference, and it was a school's parents' conference, and we talked about the importance of understanding your son or daughter who's going through exams, and Mum came up to us afterwards and gave Danny a hug, because she said that this map she wished she'd had, because unfortunately she lost her son to suicide. And her point was, I never felt like I had language to understand him or him to explain what was going on. So as I said in that video, off the map was a part that we wanted on there so that people could flag up when there's nowhere really that they think they are. Because there's bad places on the map, but if nowhere really on the map is enough, there's this place. And since doing this at Arsenal, there was the psychosocial team that pulled it together, and we presented it. It became a communication tool. That was its point. Its point was to get players and coaches to be able to talk about tougher stuff, and to talk about the ability to know where you are and know where you want to be and how you're going to move. And it's since, there's a version up at Man United, they've done the mountains, I think, at Man United, and there's been other examples when I wrote to the German FA, the DFB, and there's lots of places. And I guess my desire is that if there's anything of use on it, that you're able to adopt it and use it in your own way, in your own context. But certainly, working with teenage boys for a large amount of my career meant I got very little answers. How are you? One word answer, fine. Calm, okay. It didn't really tell me too much. It didn't make it easy for me to help. And the stereotypical, I walked into one of my first clubs, and they had, in my office, unlike any of the other offices, I had a chaise longue. I was like, what do you think I'm going to do with that? Be a bit weird, wouldn't it, if I asked teenage boys to come in and lie down on the couch? They find it hard enough to talk to a member of staff anyway, so by having it up on a wall, it meant instead of it being this really intimate, intense, difficult, awkward conversation, it could be, well, we're both looking at this together. So as we stand alongside each other, and we're looking at it over there, it's far less confronting. And also, if I'm talking about a place, it feels less personal than if I'm talking about myself. So I can tell you I'm struggling, and I'm in the valley of despair, or I'm on Mount Challenge, or I'm in the Lost Forest. And a lot used to go into the hidden cave. Players put that on the map. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but then the others all used to say they were in there. So there must have been a right party in the hidden cave. Everyone was in there. And I think that was when they just found themselves putting on the tracksuit, coming in, doing the job, getting out, avoiding any conflict, avoiding any trouble. So all of these places have a story. We've then got to find out what's the story behind where they are. It also gave us a language for normalising other stuff that happened in the journey. So when you're injured, there's a good chance that you're going to feel a little bit out of things, and you're going to be down here on Isolation Island. Or if you go on loan, which is seen as the next step, suddenly you go from this academy that you've not really used to, but you're now out here a little bit, feeling like, is the manager really watching me over here? Does he know what I'm doing at Ross County in Scotland on the weekend. So there's lots of places. We also had lots of players that were from difficult socioeconomic backgrounds. So we wanted, again, a place where they could say without judgment what was going on. So we had, the urban jungle. We had conversations about gangs. And that's when I work with lots of other practitioners to help them with the distraction that goes on in the city or there. It became so useful that we put a key to it to try and explain the stuff that the players had come up with. So when we went from the hand-drawn one to the bigger one, we started to say, what brings you to a place and what takes you away from the place? So what can help and hinder you? And this is where we came up with, or we included, language from psychology. So we've got the ACEs there, adverse childhood experiences. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but there's lots of research in counselling and in child psychology all about the more of those that you experience, the increase in the lack of success and effectively early death at some level that there's a chance of. So we were able to ask those going through it at the time, how many of these things do you witness? Are you part of? Do you see going on around you? Because it's one thing helping the adults who've been children, what they went through when they were children. It's another thing helping the child at the time who's going through this stuff. And we can't often change it, but we can support and help with some of it. So we had initially started putting things on the map, like a house, and that would be home. And then we realised for all players that wasn't a happy place. So we didn't want to assume anything either way. And so the map actually ended up having more off it than on it, so that people could move around and tell us what took them to those places. So yeah, coming up with something that they draw, that they come up with, that they bring a coach into and they talk to. Maybe this is something in your context that could be possible. Players started telling other players about it. So this was a conversation between a Polish boy and a Macedonian, of which I didn't understand any of, but they were using the map in my room, so I just let them do it. This is pre-match, it's about 3 hours before a game. But they obviously decided there was something that they had to talk about. And then players started using it to communicate. They would go into the office or the player rec room and they would send a picture about where they were. I've just got a new contract, I got that photo sent through. Or I've moved myself here, because that's where I am today. Or eventually you get a text and they just circle the area. That one's frustration fortress. Not being selected again while I'm low. So it became a communication tool. The younger players started to be able to speak at conferences about it. They used to be able to, it gave them a voice. Suddenly the Premier League were like players who were able to talk about themselves, their well-being, their performance, their mental health. Let's hear from them. So suddenly they were on stage. This is the under 13s and some from the under 16s talking about it at a Premier League conference. To the point that some of the boys were asked at their leadership groups. So there used to be 2 players per age group in one of my clubs, including the first team all the way down to the under 9s. So we had the under 9s in with 2 people from the first team and every year in between. And that leadership group would decide a topic each year that they wanted to raise awareness to. And based on some of the backgrounds, the players said we want to talk about knife crime in London. It's a big issue, it's happening to a lot of our friends. We stay out of it because we've got football, but sometimes it is an issue and we lose people. And so they ended up going to meet Sadiq Khan, who is the Lord Mayor of London, and getting funding for every Premier League football club to have 10,000 towards their community initiative every year if they did one. So there was real political influence, community engagement and things. But there's also the skills. These are 2 young men who go to Westminster and they get to talk to the Prime Minister. And their life skills that they can take as added value to whatever they do after football. So what we were trying to do was give them life skills, give them an awareness of their role outside of sport, enable them to have things on their CV for life after sport, and those skills, presentation skills, impression management, how to come across, how to represent, and how to be less narrow in their identity and therefore less frail. And I know that there was their parents who said to me they were as proud the day they did that as the Saturday when they scored a goal. I don't know if I believe them, but they said it to me, so I'll take it. So, for the drawing, we've talked a little bit about the system outside of you, and And that's what we would do with the players. We talk about the journey. We talk a lot about the map and the journey. So we're going to talk a little bit about the system inside. The best way I know how to help other people is to help them get into the shoes of someone else. And that's not always possible, but you need to know yourself quite well, and then you also need to know someone else in their shoes. So I'm going to test your drawing skills. I'm not going to take it in, so I'm not going to judge it. But I don't know when the last time is you drew a shoe. But I'm going to ask you to do that now. And I'm going to show you the shoe I'd like you to draw. It's not any old shoe, you don't get to be that creative. Why a shoe? To get into their shoes, but also because we like to look at pretty shoes. We like to look at pretty performances. We love to look at a performer who does something that looks so easy and effortless. And yet that's taken hours of pain and hard work and resilience. And I think the ballet shoe is the best shoe for showing that because it looks lovely. And I got as far as when they start to want you to be in points and it's ceramic or concrete or something at the bottom of them, and it's very hard, and I gave up at that point. So, we don't have physical shoes because I asked about getting us all shoes and paints, and it felt like it was all going to get a bit messy. So we're going to draw them. I'd like you to draw a sneaker on your piece of paper. So you've all got a piece of paper in front of you, or on your sheet. And there's just going to be a little bit of a practical as we go along the next couple of sections. So you're going to draw a Converse type sneaker. Don't worry about what it says around it for the moment. But you're going to give drawing a sneaker a go. Somewhere in the middle of a page, give yourself some space. I won't be looking. Okay, if we have the shoe, this takes a lot longer because people really do get funny about the drawing part of this. But we're not going to do as much of that today. What we're going to do is the thinking behind the drawing. So the shoe is split up to 5 areas. And at the front of it, on the toe, if it was a Converse trainer, you'd have that little patch on the front. The question that I ask and pose teams, athletes, parents, coaches, what is your purpose or direction? What is your why? And as I ask that tonight, I guess I'd love you to write that question down for yourself, or write your answer, if you know. And on the face of this can sometimes seem like a really simple question, and then I've had people go, oh, that's a big question. That's an existential question. What's my why? And there's 2 reasons I ask it. It's, do you know your why? And do you know your child or athlete's why? Absolutely.
When you ask what is your purpose or direction, in general, or our purpose or direction for being
In general, please. So bigger than tonight, I'd love you when you're asking yourself these questions to think, what is my purpose? And you might just leave the question there. You might need more time to think about that. What we try to do whenever I do this is give enough time so you can think about it, but not too long so you start to orchestrate what you think it should be or overthink it. And at any given time, we try in any of the environments that I work to come in regularly and recheck this, because the same man never fishes in the same river twice, because the river and the water changes and the man changes. So all these 5 questions that we will go through will change at any given time. And if you're going through a lot of change, if you're a young person, who you want to be and what you want to do at 12 is different to 13, let alone 18. and it changes regularly, but also adults who go through lots of change. Things that we choose, but also things that we don't choose, change us significantly. And so really checking all of this. And a follow-up question, do I know my why? Do I know my child's why, or my athletes? And do I know my why in relation to my child? Mine's to help. Mine is to try and guide people to where they want to get to. That's quite synonymous in the work I do, and it drives the toe of my shoe. But it also does that because my experience is elite sporting systems. The good, it's an honour and a privilege to work in them. You get to represent your country or a club, you get to go on the world stage or travel around the world, and that organisation or family is a really amazing place to be, but it's not who we are. But often we can get caught up in it. You can hear people talking as if the only thing they talk about is how that team did at the weekend, or what the result was. Or you have these athletes who go to family gatherings. You guys might be hosting them, or you might have people around, and all the child who's an athlete gets is, did you play, did you not play, how did you do, did you win, did you lose, did you score, did you not, did you beat the time? And more often than not, the athlete will say to me, they start to avoid those things. Not because they don't like to see those people, they love those people, but they don't like the attention, sometimes at the cost of another sibling. Or secondly, if they're injured, if they're not doing well, it feels like there's nowhere to hide. And even if they're doing well, they're embarrassed by the attention being on them and the sole focus being about their performance. So that's again where you as parents can be really helpful. You can steer the normality in the relationships they have at home and with the people that you've got some control over. We can't control social media, we can't control how they're seen in public life, but in family gatherings and in holidays, that's where they get to be just who they are. There is passion and competition on show and in abundance. That's a really exciting part about working in elite sport. Performance and readiness to perform are crucial components. Responsibility in our professions, but also our personal lives. And I think you as parents have all of this going on as well. Everything is based around what they should eat, where they need to be, what we need to do. And I think some of that expectation is on your shoulders as much as it is the athletes. And I guess I ask the question, where does that responsibility have time off? At what point do you get to not worry about all of that and it just be normal? And this high consequence environment, it matters. Certainly many of the team talks I've been in, it really matters. We're talking about it like it's peace and war, but actually having perspective on that is really important. So if they have lost that day, if things have gone badly, if the press is talking about your athlete or child, can you normalise or get them away from that? Can you help them realise it means something, but it doesn't mean everything? It doesn't define you, it doesn't define the team, it doesn't define who you are. So I said all the good stuff, that was the good list. This is the less good list in my experience. Chaotic, complex, toxic, traumatic at times, high-pressured, intense, relentless, competitive. That's a lot. It's a lot for them to deal with, it's a lot for you to deal with. So how are you going to navigate that? But by understanding it, by knowing this, it gives you a language and it gives you stuff that you can talk to your athlete about, and that's really helpful. The chaos, again. Third question. Do you, as parents and guardians and coaches and athletes, ever feel like it's the system versus you? Do you ever think that they could do more or that you see it differently? So I found that this happened to me quite a bit, and I've had to work really hard at this, individually as a practitioner, but also in the systems that I work in. So I work in an environment that believes a lot in technical approaches. Elite sport has a lot of technical coaching. And then the next one on the list is tactical coaching. So when we're done talking about your technique, we start talking about the tactics of the game. And then after that, we get into the physical robustness, and then somewhere down the line, we get into how you are as a person. And I found myself reading more and more research about the Socratic approach instead of the sophist approach. How can we do personal examination into ourselves as athletes, coaches, practitioners, rather than take all the evidence from the technical alone? But by doing that, I found myself being very angry at the system, and I had to work really hard that didn't come across, and that I worked on myself. I did the second approach so that I could help the first. Because if you as a parent or guardian are anti the system, if you have got what I believed I had was really good morals and ethics, and I wanted to do things the right way, you might become a bit more in division of what the system is trying to do and how you're trying to support the athlete. So you could inadvertently cause a rift, and then the athlete is left going, do I trust my parent or do I trust the system? So working with the system really helps. Can you get on the same page as those coaches and staff? Can you help them understand more about your son or daughter? And also as a system, can you work with the parents if they feel like the challenging parent or the difficult parent? Can you work out why? By working with them and understanding their difficulty, we might get to understanding the athlete better and helping them. So that was the first one. The second one that I also found really useful when working and supporting athletes is we all believe that sequence is linear, and we do a really good job saying come in at under 9s, and then you'll get to under 10s, and then you'll get to under 11s, and you'll just go from podium, all the way from pathway to podium. And we have documents that lay it out, whether it's at the FA or wherever else, and they literally talk about grassroots to podium to grave. They really like laying it all out for you. If you just follow the path, you'll do this journey. And the journey's not like that. People get deselected, they get injured, lots happens along the way. So instead, can we look at key moments? As staff, as parents, can we look at the key moments? Can we get the added value in the now, rather than constantly talking about the next step? Because the next step might not happen, or it might be backwards, or it might be around. And all of that conversation about linear progression and sequencing can often make it feel as if I've done wrong if I've not followed. Unfortunately, sport's not like an accountancy degree. You can't just do the qualification, get the job, get the promotions, end up. It's like you prepare, and I always give the analogy of a performer like a violinist. So they work really hard, it's a performance as well. But there's not someone trying to tackle them on stage to stop them performing. Whereas any other athlete, there's someone else trying to take them down. It's not just them doing their thing, unless it's some of the individual sports. So is that terminology that you can work with, understand, help, use in conversations? When I learned that, I felt very consciously incompetent. I found myself going from what I didn't know to what I knew I didn't know or wasn't dealing with very well, to then trying to be consciously competent and help, to then hopefully move around this Kolb's learning cycle. And every time I fail, which is most of the time, or make a mistake, I try and see it as this is another moment for me to realise what I've not been aware of. So at least I'm more aware and can be better. And I think that's a really helpful place for us to see coaches. They'll make mistakes, for us to see ourselves as parents and everything else. We'll make mistakes. How can we frame it as it's more learning? And how can we frame it for our young people when they believe they're the one who lost the game for the team? What's the learning we can take? Was it really your fault? What's the perspective? Back to the shoe. And we're going to keep coming back to it as we do these 5 bits, but that's what held me back. So on the back of your shoe, a reference to the Achilles heel, the thing that holds you back. The question to write on your paper is, what holds you back? And I'm not going to ask you around the room for the answers on that. But I'd like to give you a minute just to think about what, as a parent or a coach, or a member of staff, or a father, or a son, or a grandfather, what holds you back? The last time I did this shoot, this was probably the conversation that was the most somber. It was the one that people didn't want to necessarily admit or go there. Some people gave headlines, some people went a few levels below. But in knowing ourselves, knowing our weaknesses, help us get there. And athletes will be daily told what they're not good at. It's one of the strengths of the elite sporting environments is how quickly we look for deficit. We're like deficit detectives. We're always looking for what we can improve. And that's really important because we want to get better and we want to close the gap of where we want to get to. But it's also really difficult because it means more often than not, they find it hard to be happy with good enough, happy with the job they did today, happy with where they are. There's this constant looking for better and gap. So they'll probably be quite quick at telling you what holds them back. And they might blame others. They might say the guy doesn't pass to me. That might be their reason. Or they might say tactics or a coach or whatever else. But I think knowing all the time your shoe and then asking them about their shoe, what do you think it is that's holding you back? What do you feel like is hard for you in this environment if they're having a tough time? Whether that's at sport, at school, in relationships, it could be that that's what unlocks the conversation about talking to people, asking for help. Imposter syndrome, this is where a lot of that tends to come out on the shoe. What holds people back is the expectation on them, what they think they can do but they're not sure if they can when they step up. Wanting that opportunity, but as soon as they get it, what do they do with the nerves that come with it? So it often drives a really honest and different conversation. And ultimately, we're trying to help people go through a lot of change. And it's really useful to know what that change is and the highs and lows, because then we know we're constantly dealing in that state of flux. And many of the presentations are going to talk about the fact that our job is not to take away the burden or remove the rocks on the journey, but to prepare the player for the journey and the path. Not all athletes will get selected. Not all athletes will get contracts. Athletes will get injured. Athletes will be exhausted from the physical and psychological demands. And these are all the things they come home in the afternoon and evening and at the weekend to you guys. And it can be quite easy as a parent thinking, God, I keep bringing them there and they keep having this happen. And there can be a view of like, should I make it easier? Should I go in and talk? Or should I pull them out? Or should we go somewhere else? I'm sure it won't be like that somewhere else. But elite sport does give opportunities to play and improve transferable skills that are so sought after in the business world and many other sectors. And it is highly competitive and inspiring, but it is tough. And so knowing it's going to be tough is part of the conversation. We don't want them to only talk about the pathway and the success and the good bits, but we don't also only want to talk about the bad stuff. And ultimately, we want to know how to cope when they are exhausted when they come in. And I remember one PE teacher telling one of my athletes who was falling asleep in class the next day. And she said, come on, like, Graham, what is wrong with you? Like, got them to stay at break time. What is wrong with you? I know you had sport last night, but we all do stuff. I did half an hour on the treadmill at the gym. And he looked at the PE teacher and he was like, I did 4.5 hours and over 12K of running at high intensity. I don't think we were doing the same. And I was being judged and selected and in workshops, and I had to travel, and so sometimes we can assume we know what it's like. And I think when they've got a lot going on at school, physically going through pubescence, dealing with everything around that, it can be absolutely demanding, and our job is just to understand and care, and then be intuitive, and if they need a rest, they need a rest, from whether it's sport or from how we help them balance schoolwork. But the system is also quite tumultuous. It goes on lots of roller coasters. And the system, again, is the sports organisations, but also you guys. So there's short funding cycles, there's fixed contracts, short-term result-focused. It's really hard to tell them it's all going to be okay because they're saying, I've been given a 1-year contract, or I've been given a short amount of money to go for this Olympic cycle. There's rapid changeover of managers, coaches, and associated staff. I really like the manager. He gets me. I'm in the team. Manager's gone. New manager. Ooh, I don't know if he likes me. I don't know what to do. There's pressure on the short-term results. Staff work unrelenting schedules. So often the coach you're trying to talk to is really tired, and he's just dealt with something else, or she's just dealt with something else. So how can we appreciate the people trying to help the athletes as well as understand and work with them? There's opportunities to progress some of the pathways, but some of the professional training is scoped out, some of it isn't. And again, it is an inspiring environment like it is for the athletes, but it can also be really hard work. So I believe sometimes for parents, for staff, for athletes, there can be a narrow identity from quite a young age. They put on that shirt when they're young, that first kit. And we even know it as fans, right? We probably all support some team, whether that's in rugby or tennis or football or whatever it is, because we saw them play on TV and they won or they lost, or your parents supports them, or there's some reason why you support a team. And from that moment on, that's it. They're your team, that's your identity. No matter how bad they get, you still support them if you're loyal, or you jump ship and you go to another one, you get a new identity. But it can create vulnerability, because if all I am is an athlete, and I am then injured, or I'm deselected, or I'm having a tough time, I'm a bad athlete. And if I take away the athlete bit, I'm just nothing. And there's a real gap in who they are. So the questions I ask you guys in the room is, how can you help with that? We don't want at-risk adults, parents, people with narrow identities, breeding at-risk children. And what does performance masquerade? Why do we attract certain people? Why do certain people do better in this environment than others? How do we do the risk assessments? How do we be broader in our understanding of ourselves and our athletes? So we did that deliberately in a few places that I worked in. We worked together with a real clear intent to help people have broader identities. And there'll be lots more said about that in the other keynotes. But the reality is we wanted to help everyone understand that players have lots going on and there's someone who's here to help you talk about it. And then between us, we'll help you on, off the pitch, at home, with stuff that's going on. The players, the parents, the siblings, our support went quite wide and far. And we probably got stuff right and wrong along the way. I remember one boy was in a really difficult situation, so the club moved his whole family. And that was great for while he was in the team and in the club, not great when he was then out the other side of it, or when the trouble followed him. So we wanted to try and promote social development, create psychologically safe environments, have a holistic curriculum. And so you can be part of that. We wanted parents on the boards of this, and we wanted athletes' voice. And so if ever there's an opportunity to do it, as tough as it is, it's great hearing what you've got to say and how you feel about it all. We believe better people make better performers. So we're doing this all to help them as individuals, but also to help performers. Can you put the child at the centre of the decisions? Can you have an empty chair in any conversation that's happening, which is what would the child think about the decision we're making as parents or staff about them right now? Even the really young ones can tell you what they want. I think I've been guilty of going, okay, well, he's only, so we'll just tell him what to do. We know what's in his or her best interests. And actually, they've got very independent minds and have challenged me many times. Can we align our messages to the system inside? And can we reinforce that perspective of it's not, it means something, but it doesn't mean everything? Another video. This is quite a powerful video. It was one devised by 9 and 10-year-olds. We asked them to tell us what they were thinking, what their voices said. We wanted them to tell their parents what they found really helpful on their journey. So they all wrote a letter to their parent, but we didn't really want to just send them to the parents. Well, that might be a bit confronting. So we amalgamated all the letters and we put it to some music into a video, and then we presented it back to the parents. So we got all the parents back in over the different age groups. And we've used this quite a bit, so I'm going to let you hear the players' views.
Dear Mum, dear Dad, I love it when you are positive and encourage me.
I love it when you applaud all the wonderful things I do, and when you have faith and belief in me.
I love it when you clap me and shout well done when I do something good. And if I don't play very well, you help me and we look at the positives. I love it when you are positive.
I like it when you wink at me when I'm playing well.
I like it when you're supporting me when I'm down, or you say it's not a problem.
I love it when you're showing support when I do something wrong.
I love it when you give me thumbs up and when you smile. It makes me feel really happy.
I don't like it when you shout at me when I make a mistake. I really don't like it when you shout at me when I'm playing matches because you distract me.
I really hate it when you shout at me. When you shout at me, I feel embarrassed and feel like I'm not welcome.
I don't like it when you shake your head on the sideline.
I really don't like it when you roll your eyes.
I don't like it when you look a bit annoyed at me or when you give me a face of disappointment when I make a mistake.
I really don't like it when you have a mean face.
I don't like it when you put your hands on your head and look down.
Or when you walk off in a game.
I don't like it when you say I haven't done well and I don't get to have fun for the rest of the day.
I also don't like it when you moan at me when I miss a goal or make a bad pass.
I don't like it when you tell me off in the van when I make a mistake or I do something wrong. And in the car, you get angry about how bad I've done and don't say what I've done well, and I get sad.
I don't like it when you keep on going on and on about my mistakes.
I really wish you would get off your phone whilst you're watching me.
I really want you to let the coaches do the job instead of you, because I can learn more football by listening to the coach. I wish you would relax when I'm playing more.
I wish in the future maybe you could not get too angry if I have a bad game. Tell me what I need to improve on.
In a calm way so I can listen. I really wish you would control yourself and just say positive things. I wish you would say, I've done well more. Encourage me when I play good and bad. Show me that you're happy with me more and motivate me in a more positive way.
Compliment me more often.
Give me more thumbs up.
Smile at me more.
Thank you for everything you do for me, for bringing me to football and supporting me when I'm playing. Thank you for always making time for me and making my lunch after training. I am grateful that you take me here at Arsenal every week, and I hope you have good days at work. You work so hard for me.
Thank you for always putting up with my moaning. Thank you for always believing in me, even when I don't do my best.
Thank you for always being there when I need you the most.
I really appreciate everything you do for me.
Everything, Mum and Dad.
Thank you, your son.
Really powerful. I think it gives you a view of what the young people think and what they're picking up on that you don't realise. It probably makes us all think, do I do that? Have I done that? Did they catch me doing that? So it links back to your values. So for this part of the shoe, we're now looking at inside the back of the shoe, because I guess no one knows your values, they just know the value-driven behaviour that they see. So if you were to point an arrow to the inside of the back of the shoe, and the question that's at the back of it is, what are my values? What do I lead my behaviours with? What is it that's really important to me? And I think this is a really important question, because this is often where we clash with the system. This might be where we clash with the child. I just asked her to pick up her shoes. Or whatever it was. It's where values might lead us to do certain behaviours because of the passion and the care we have for the people we're looking after. And they might be the same values that your coach holds, but just comes out in a different behaviour. So I think knowing your inner values are really important. And then maybe what are the values you're teaching at home? And what are the values the organisation that's got the care of your child is teaching them? And having a conversation about that. Asking them over dinner. Instead of, did you win today? Did you lose? You might say, do you ever do any stuff on values? Is that how you guys operate when you're at the club or at the tour? Or because a lot of organisations I work with do a lot on values. And it might be a more interesting conversation that you can then have. It also will underpin how you go about your parenting and your coaching. So it's always worth checking in with what they are. So we spoke earlier on about the system, and it can be really easy when we look at things to think that others could do better. The sport needs to do better, the organisation needs to do better. It needs to be run more like a business if you work outside of it. There's lots of things that we think. And so, if we were all to think that the other could do better, the parent, the guardian, the coach, the staff, if our view was everyone else could do better, what is it that we think that they might be lacking? Probably it's that time and place so that they can cope better with emotions. If I was to boil it all down, it's normally the angry person, parent or coach. It's normally the frustrated child or athlete. It's normally we've run out of the energy or the best version of ourselves. It's normally what we get frustrated with the other person. And often that can come from a lack of self-care and self-development. And I know that's your whole job as a coach and as a parent, to put the child first, but often if we don't put ourselves first, we can't best look after them. And so a big piece of advice I have for you individually and for the systems you're part of and the families that you're in is, can you look after yourself and see that as a part of helping them? Because if not, it becomes a vulnerability. It can become an ego, an insecurity, a pressure, a frustration. So how do we make coaches and parenting and practitioner transferable? How can we help with lots of skills? Can we give you education, individualised plans? Can we give you enough CPD? Why I loved that parents were on this conference was because we coach the children to understand what goes on in elite sport. We give them the mental skills, we give them the coping skills, we give them the lifestyle information. And then they come home and you guys are trying to catch up and keep up with that, especially the higher they go, the quicker they go. And you're on the same journey, going through the same pressures and expectation and nerves, but might not have the same skills. So I think it's amazing you're at this, but also what more could you do, or get involved in, or look up? And how do we supervise and support all of that? So the best leaders from the environments that I've worked in, they're reflective, they're resilient, they're open to being vulnerable and creating a learning environment. They have a sense of maturity. There's some wisdom and skill transferability, confidence and competence. These are things that you can look out for in the environments where your sons and daughters are going to go. They're the things that you can look to develop or add to an environment. The environment mightn't have these, but is there a role you can play practically? They're psychologically minded. Doesn't mean they're all psychologists, but they want to align language, they want to simplify, they want to make people feel safe. That doesn't mean they won't do pressure training. We have to prepare the athlete for the challenge ahead. So we will do pressure training and pressure testing and fitness testing and lots of other really tough stuff. But we will make it really clear what we're doing, when we're doing it, why we're doing it, how to support if you fall short. So we're not going to get away from the tough stuff. But the more support there is on a good day, the more you can challenge them on a tough day. So this soft stuff that it often gets looked at enables greater growth and greater pressure in a more sustainable way. Leaders can hold the balance between challenge and support. They're developmentally focused. And lots of the next 2 days is going to talk about long-term athlete development. But you will see that challenge and support, high challenge. But leaders will model self-care and self-development. So when I have athletes saying, oh, well, I can't tell mum because she's really stressed, or I can't tell dad because he's really stressed, that often is the role modelling that makes it hard for them to tell you the tough part about what sport is. And they go, do you know when they're not? When they come to my game. When they're at the athletic meet, they're fine. Or my mum and dad are divorced, they fight most of the time, but when I put them in a box together, they play nicely. So the athlete again thinks they're the person who, if they keep doing what they do, they'll keep everyone else okay. So strangely, a lot of athletes, in my experience, become old before their time. They seem to take on a more senior role than they should. And whether that's the income they're generating, if it's in professional sports. Some of the less professional sports, there's less money, so there is more dependency on parents. But they often take on this role, even when not asked. So it's not that any of parents would ever ask it, but how can we enable you to reassure them that's not what you're even implicitly asking. So how will you use your strengths? That's what you put on the side of the shoe. A strength-based approach is always, in my opinion, the way to caveat against being the deficit detective. So if you're always looking at the gap, how can we also reiterate the strengths? For any athlete, they've got to know what they're good at. They've got to be reminded about what they're good at. They've got to try and make what they're good at their super strength. And that's the same for all of you in the room. So I guess if you sit for one moment and do the self-care, self-development for yourself right now, what is your super strength or strengths? What is it you bring to your child, your athlete, your home, your work, the way you role model? I'm going to give you a minute. You might want to talk to your partner or a friend, or you might just want to sit with your thoughts, or you might want to write it down, but I know I'm talking fast, so I'm trying to slow myself down, so I'm going to give you a minute without me talking. The question I have is, are you leading with your strengths? Do you do a lot of what you do really well most of the time? And is your athlete getting to do the same, or your child? I think we're better when we are. And for you guys in the room, it's really hard to help those you love if you're not looking after yourself. And it's the biggest bit we look at when we look at coach development, when we look at practitioner development, and I do parent workshops and I run parent groups, and it's all about how do we find a little bit of time for you. And that might be you have to drive and you go to the training session, but in that hour that you're there is a running track around the outside. It's a very complex world. We've kind of said that numerous times. There's a lot going on. How do you fit it all in, both practically as well as emotionally? And that's really hard to do. We were looking at timetables going, how do we fit in holistic stuff? How do we, the schedule's so backed up and it's so busy, there's always time for 15 minutes or half an hour. And we used to run clubs at lunchtimes, and we used to run stuff in the evening, and when parents came in and dropped their kids off, I'd run other sessions. I'd run mindfulness, we'd get in Pilates instructors. There's ways to do stuff for parents, or do the parents' AGMs while they're already at the club. So how can you make efficiencies within the system that's already hectic to fit in stuff for you guys as well as for your athletes? And how can they fit in stuff as well? And how can we backfill the things that they might be missing because of all this extra that they're getting? And that's a hard job, but there are ways. We can get them all in a room doing a bit of headspace every once in a while. So the last bit of the shoe is the sole of the shoe. And the question I always want to bring back anyone that I have with any of the private clients or the elite athletes or the business people I work with is what makes your soul shine and or what keeps you grounded. So the two times often people get sad are the things that hold you back and the things on the sole of your shoe. And that seems surprising because it's the sole of your shoe, it makes your soul shine. But often it's the reflection that they've not spent enough time doing that. Or, gosh, that's the thing that's most important to me and I don't do it, or I don't do it enough. And it's that realization that normally causes people to find it difficult to talk about it, or to feel repurposed when they leave and say, oh, I have to find the time, I have to prioritize that. I don't want to be talking on what I lost because I didn't have an eye on that. But we've also got to ask ourselves, are all our needs around our shoe being met where we are? Are we wearing the right shoe? Are we on the right terrain with the right shoe? Are we walking the right journey? Are we on track to the right destination? All of these questions, and it's an analogy, but the point is, am I doing the right thing at the right time with the right people? And that's the same questions to ask your athlete. If they are sad more often than not, and not just tired because of a tough session, but they really look like they don't want to go to training. They're really not enjoying the team they're in, the people they're with. There's something that's not quite right. Having those conversations with them might elicit that they no longer want to wear a trainer, but they want to have their shoes off because they want to be in a pool and they want to be doing that sport, or they want to be in a boat, or they want to be on the sea, or there's another version of sport that they want to be doing. And it's the same reason when we investigate all of these that people change careers later on because they decide, what do I really want? Am I doing this because I was good at it? Did it start off and I did it because it was fun, but now I'm professional, it's far less fun and money's on the line and my family is on the line and my career and my income. So what do you do? Why do you do it? how can I change? If I wanted to change, will everyone support me? I hear a lot of people when athletes go through career changes, they say, oh, what are my parents going to say? After all that investment of time and money, if I go back and say, I just don't enjoy it, it's left me feeling quite twisted. The pressure makes me feel so anxious that I feel quite sick and I never really get over it and I don't like it. Now, if that was any other job, you'd tell your child to just change jobs, move firms, do a different thing, try a different course. But very few people actively tell athletes to give up what we see as their dream, even if the dream is no longer making them happy. But it'll be evident, especially if we look for it. So I think as parents, what you can do is check in on yourself. Am I role modeling some of this for my athlete, for my child? And am I asking them the questions about theirs? And we genuinely believe that if your soul shines, you're grounded, you're more resilient, and you're able to take on more challenges. So a bit of a summary. This world, sport, our systems are complex, are chaotic. The humans are complex, our care should be unconditional. The key to happiness is understanding and accepting that the journey has got highs and lows, and we can lead with ourselves. Maybe get into someone else's shoes for a while, try them on, see if you'd like to do it. Try that activity or that new terrain. Take your shoes out and try and have a begin again mindset. It's something we ask the athletes to do regularly. Instead of being, we've seen it all before, we know it all, what can we learn, what can we do differently, what can I try and find out? And a little bit of if interested, read, listen, look further. Some things that I've found really useful along the way. A really old article, 1996. Not really meant to put things up that are older than 10 years. But it was the beginning of my Socratic versus sophistry research. Many of the documentaries on Netflix are awesome. The athletes tell you what they want. They tell you about their journeys. They tell you about the good, bad. They tell you about how they find everything. There's some brilliant podcasts out there. I've only used a couple of examples from America and England, the ones that I've really enjoyed. And then books. There's some brilliant autobiographies. Again, the same as the Netflix stuff. They tell you what they want. They tell you their stories. One of my absolute favourites is Open by Andre Agassi. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a brilliant, brilliant book. And there's many, many more. I can send you a book list. There's a parenting workshop out recently.